All right, we're live with
All right.
Mason from Mason and the Gin Line, and we are back. We kind of had a rough start the last time, and I guess I'll go over. Do you want to explain what a gin line is?
Yeah. So the gin line is a sequence of machinery in a cotton gin that separates the lint from the seed. And the only reason that's our name is because we were searching for something different. And I don't really know how I even thought to bring that into the mix, but my family's been in the cotton ginning thing for several generations now. In fact, at least 4, maybe even 5. I think there hadn't been one of us smart enough to get out of it yet. Is probably the biggest thing. I have kind of odd that I find myself in it because I grew up thinking I'll get away from this stuff at some point, but that's a whole different story. I'm kind of a procrastinating person by nature, and so I ended up working around the industry and in it some. And we're not cotton ginners per se. We build the machinery for these plants that process cotton. And 5 years ago, my dad started his own operation doing that, and basically told me, "You're going to come do it with me." And so I was glad to do it. You know.
Yeah. Is it risky being a guitar player for your digits, your fingers?
Oh yeah, but I wouldn't do anything better before all that. I chopped that one off with a table saw. That thumb is shorter than the other one, and that's on the left hand. So and they're all scarred up. That one has had a grinder disc through it, and that's been broke. I'm a hand worker guy, and always have been. It's kind of funny because some people find this part interesting, but I'm not a guy without some level of education. I've got a bachelor's degree from Texas Tech in philosophy, and I have a master's in history from Wayland Baptist University. So,
Wow.
but that fact says a lot about me because that's all fun stuff that leads to no career, and yet I did it. Does that make sense? Like I thought, oh man, I'll pursue this, and the philosophy thing, I had no clue what I was going to do. Years later, I went back and got a master's in history, thinking maybe I might teach it, right? Because I just was not really going anywhere in that part of my life. And things opened up in the process. I finished the degree, but I didn't end up teaching history. So I probably wouldn't be much of a hand at a university anyway these days. I'm probably too right leaning for most universities, which is not to say I'm a crazy person. I'm not. I'm the furthest person right in my band.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I'm in a band with a bunch of awesome liberals. More liberal than
interview.
More liberal than me.
It all balances out. It's like I always bought. You would probably know, being a history major. Thomas Jefferson said like something of, "I've never lost friends over a difference of religion and or politics." And
no, the thing is, I'm not like some folks are on either side of that spectrum. I'm always interested in listening to what somebody's position is, no matter what it is. What hot topic stuff of the day, whether it be trans rights or something like this, right? I'm always open, all ears, and I'm not claiming to have answers to all that stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, the world is crazy. I'm a pretty conservative guy, but one of the biggest followers and supporters of our band is a trans person. So, this is such is life. I'm not casting any judgment, you know. I don't know how I brought that up. I'm just saying, for example, you know, whether it's Israel, Gaza, or whatever, I'm always interested to hear people's position, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but like you said, a key word, you listen too. There's some people that just won't even listen.
On both sides. On both sides that are terrible about it. And people that feel like they have the answers. I don't. I'm a right trending kind of person because I grew up that way. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. I'm from West Texas. Those values stuck. There are other values systems in the world. That's the one I came up under. And so that's what I reference to. But like I said, I'm, you know, with regard to many things, I think like you said, you know, the more I talk a lot, right? But I also listen. And I'm always interested in hearing what people think about something, you know?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Definitely the same way. It's the only way you learn and grow, and just I'm always a fan of learning new things and different angles and opinions, and you might also change some of your own or adapt.
Oh yeah,
so that's
totally, for sure.
It's the way you got to be, and especially if you travel.
Well, that's what me and Steve were talking about earlier. Is he's lived in a lot of places, and I haven't. I've been out here forever and never left for any reason. So it's important for me sometimes to kind of. I never left for any reason other than vacation. Sorry, I cut that short, but it's important for me sometimes to remember. It's very easy to get locked into a way of looking at things that's not very far from where you are. You know, all of our worlds start inside of us, you know, and we have a tendency to believe that that the world actually operates around us, you know, but I don't think it does, right? I mean, not in the big scheme of things. So, you know, I think that's part of being anybody that's, I think most people that find themselves in the world of art will have those tendencies to be open-minded most of the time.
Yeah, and there's always those rare birds that just they go into seclusion. That always blew my mind of some artist and even like someone like scientist and even like what was it, Howard Hughes? Like locked himself in like a hotel room for forever and just like you can get lost in your own mind. So.
Yes, in fact, you know, I won't go into any details, but you know, within our own band, I think something that sort of comes off of the music to some extent, but the imagery in a big way is there's a little bit of macho in it. You know, you the cowboy hat, the whole deal. But I think all of us guys in this band have had some issues with mental health stuff in the past, you know, and I'm not too big and proud to admit that, you know what I mean? So, I'm always thinking about that, you know, don't get lost in yourself, you know what I mean? Because people go nuts.
Yeah. And it's especially hard for like someone as yourself being the front man, because, you know, those are your guys. You know what I mean? That's a huge responsibility. You're the foreman, you know, and that's like, I know like Wyatt Flores, he took some time off for mental health, and it's every detail you just have to be on top of. It's a job in itself, and people don't realize how stressful it can be just to get we have like 4 or 5 guys in the band to all get one place all at the same time.
Oh, for sure. Luckily, I think you've talked some with Blaze. Luckily, my job as being a foreman to some extent has been much easier because Blaze is a very organized guy, and he's helped with a lot of that so much. and the other part, like I say, I'm actually thinking in my own head, I wish I hadn't come out and called those guys a bunch of liberals or whatever, because they would probably define their own political. You know what I'm saying? Not to jump back to that. I'm just saying I'm really, really lucky. All of the guys in the band they're really awesome and easy to work with. And of course, in our situation, not being, at least at the moment, a band that this is all we do, that's almost a benefit, because we're not on the road together all the time, So when we get together, we're looking forward to it. You know what I mean? We're actually looking forward to seeing one another, because it a lot of times, it's at least been a week, since the last weekend or whatever. And so it's always fun with those guys. They're great.
Yeah. And it's nice when one of the benefits, some people think, there is a benefit of doing music full time professionally, but if some of the guys still have jobs, it's nice when they have their own money outside of not being dependent on the band, especially when everybody has their own world. I've always found that to be a rough spot, when there's people in the band that have jobs, and then like two of your members will be dependent on that gig money. And it's like, well, we're all doing this. We got to work on this weekend. We got to provide for our families. And they're just kind of like, well, what about me? And that's, then you get worried, oh, they're going to join up with somebody else. But it is nice when your band members are financially independent.
For sure. We kind of experience that to some extent, because our second guitar player, Kevin, he plays with us when he can, and he doesn't when he can't. And it's for that reason. Kevin is a fantastic guitar player, and he teaches guitar, and he plays, and that's what he does. And so there's another outfit from around here that he plays guitar with now full time, and we weren't mad at him. We're happy for him, because we weren't doing enough to pay the bills for him. And so when we get a chance, it's just added firepower. But for him, he's got a better situation going, being able to go play, pretty much every weekend. So, and I understand that, we'd love to have him all the time, but our approach hasn't been exactly that way so far. You know what I mean? We all started this game already working and stuff, as opposed to the model of being a bunch of, 19, 20, 22-year-old guys that can afford to jump out there on the road and make what you make. You know what I mean? I just recently got married at the very end of 2022, and then had a little baby 5 months later. And so, I'll get my throat cut if I told my wife I was going to go play music and only music, because there was at the rate we can draw in at the moment, it wouldn't be enough to cover it,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not a guaranteed paycheck. It's sometimes a place won't even pay you, or the check they have bounces.
I think it's a cover, and I don't know who did it the first time, but it's been 10, 15 years ago. But on some record, George Strait had put a song out called "A Showman's Life," and it says something to the effect of, a showman's life is a smoky bar and the fevered chase of a shining star. It's a motel room and a lonely wife. Something about that. That's what I know of a showman's life. Nobody told me about this part. And it sounds funny, right? Coming from a guy like, whether it was like a Springsteen or, somebody at the top of the country food chain like George Strait. It's like, how can you complain? But the truth is, even for them, it's a give and take thing, because all the comforts of home and stuff are gone. That it's not, if you're actually a band on the road, like, for example, you probably know these guys called the Vandaliers. I don't know if you haven't.
Yeah.
You should check those guys out. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, those guys are great. I love their sound.
So we got to open for those guys and got to visit with them a little bit, and I kind of interact with one of those guys on Twitter sometimes. Those guys are the real deal. They go to every inch of this country and overseas, and it's they look, those guys have got to play some of those stages that you dream of when you want to be a rock star, no doubt. They've got to do some of that cool stuff, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes along with getting those opportunities. You know, it's
Yeah.
they're awesome. Awesome band, really nice guys, but it ain't an easy life. You know, it's a hard life actually.
Yeah, like living on the road, everything's small. Like there's no like comforts of like your own home where you can, like your back wall, walk over, grab that guitar, grab that one. You got your road guitar that like you're not going to have it in a nice case, so it's not going to be something you probably enjoy playing. It's something that you can just have bang around a bus and break possibly, and just anything, showers. And,
sharing space with sharing space with those other dudes all the time, and you can't put two people together in any circumstance for any extended period of time without them fighting. That's just the way it goes. The other night after our podcast failed thing, I had a big old fight with my wife. She was so mad. She wanted to divorce me, she said, but I knew it wasn't true. And she's happy as she can be today. But you know what I mean? Just when you live with somebody, she didn't actually mean that. But when you live with somebody, it inevitably there's going to be tension, and imagine a band with 4 guys or 6 guys or whatever. My God, it's a powder keg waiting to happen all the time. But, guys do it. And it's obviously worth the doing on some level or people wouldn't keep doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
Those guys, for example, just to stay on that example, they made an impression on me because they're the real deal. I thought in my life that I wanted to be the real deal too. And if the circumstances were right, I would. If I can write another record, which I plan on doing, that stuck somewhere and made it where doing that all the full time was possible, I would do it. But it remains to be seen whether I would like it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether the juice was worth the squeeze or however you say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it sometimes it just takes one song. Like the drummer in my band, his first co-write went platinum. Like he's a platinum song. He quit his job. He lives off his BMI checks. It's incredible. All from just 50% of a song he co-wrote.
And it's on his first out of the box.
He's been to a couple writing sessions, but the one he sat down, I remember he was live on TikTok, added me and said, "Yo, check out this song we just wrote." And they played it on TikTok. And I just remember being like, man, you need to copyright that or do something before you put it out. Cause I could tell it was good. And next thing you know, they dropped it and it's like getting bought on TV and just everywhere. Every time I open Instagram, I hear it. And it's just, cause I asked him, every quarter, I said, what's the BMI check looking like? And he's like, he lets me know. And I'm like, man, it's nuts. Sometimes it just takes one song to really move your world. Of course, he's not drumming for him anymore, and man, we haven't had a show in forever. But he's just doing what he loves now. He takes old choppers, fixes them up, and sells them. It's just what he likes doing. He likes working on bikes, and thanks to his royalties, he's able to.
Oh man,
take a step back.
Having that some mailbox money would be all right.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that would put me over the top if I could get one of those, you know. I always think to myself, if we were ever to get into a situation like that, I would like to think, and I think it's nuts to think this, but I would kind of like to think that I would still go do some of the handwork stuff still to try to stay centered. You know what I mean? I don't want to lose that part, you know. Like it would be a dream to not have to go do that kind of stuff. But the truth is I kind of like it, you know. It suits me to be in a shop somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It keeps
The
a
money ain't
reminder
worth
of
shit though. Not what it could be. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say that. I get paid well. I get paid probably more than I deserve, but there are better ways to make money than, you know, usually than fabricating sheet metal or building cabinets or whatever. You know, typically there are other ways. There's certainly easier ways, you know.
Yeah. I think I would have rather been like a therapist and just listen to other people complain and just be like, yep. Mm-hmm. It's just
You know who's got it figured out? My brother-in-law is an ER doctor. And before you think that's where I'm going, he doesn't have it figured out because that job he does have it figured out. But what I'm saying is that ER doctor thing is awesome, but man, he works so hard. He works a lot of hours and he works hard at it. When he was going to medical school, I learned a lot about med school through hanging out with him and my sister. Well, you can do a little abbreviated version of med school, you know, like 1 year less of schooling to just go be one of those doc in the box guys, you know, that works at the local clinic or whatever. Now, that guy probably makes half what my brother-in-law makes, but he goes down there and he probably shows up around 8 o'clock and he goes home at 5 o'clock, you know, and takes home really, really nice money, you know, you don't get it all. You don't get the big dough, but you got half the responsibility and enough money to live nice, you know?
yeah.
But you know what?
Yeah, I'm like
none of that. No, I was going to say that none of that, the arithmetic works though, because people like my brother-in-law would die in a place like that because he's an adrenaline junkie. They like that ER life. You know what I mean? That even though it sucks, it's a lot of hours and all that kind of stuff. They don't want to be sitting there waiting to, you know, check on the old lady's shoulder or whatever and send her on to the specialist or whoever comes in with sniffles or whatever. You got here's some penicillin. You know, they'd be bored with it.
Yeah, they want the people coming out of the helicopter and
oh my gosh. I've heard, you know, they have HIPAA rules, you know, you can't talk too much about these things, but I know enough stories without any names or anything like that, of course. Man, the stuff you see in an ER anywhere is more than I would want to handle.
Yeah, it's funny. Like it seems like no matter what emergency room you're waiting at, there's always a guy with his hand up with a fishing hook through it.
Oh yeah, fishing hook, or he's like me. He stuck it in a table saw. You know, I did.
That's not how you stop it, Mason.
I built cabinets before I did this cotton gin work, and I still do. I still do that stuff on the side, and for myself and for other people too. And that's really what I'm best at. I'm really a pro level carpenter. You know, finish and trim carpenter. And one night I was working late in my own garage doing a little side project, and I don't know how in the world I did it, but I reached down there and stuck my thumb right in that saw blade, and it'll make a mess of it quick.
Ugh.
They saved a little bit of it.
That's like,
you know,
that is like a top three fear of mine, is just losing a finger or it's doing something to it.
If you're a guitar player, other people that are not guitar players would say, I'd much rather lose a finger than, my foot or something like that. But if you're a guitar player, man, there's none to spare, really, especially on your left hand. You could probably get by with something on the other one, but no. And that's you asked me earlier if that's something I worry about. It is something that I try to be more careful with, knock on wood, that the older I get working around, whether it be metalworking stuff or woodworking stuff, because that stuff it happens all the time, even to pros.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath and Ozzy, but right the day before he left to go on tour, he cut his two fingers off. And he fashioned like plastic thimbles, and that's why he tuned down, so he could bend the strings. But that has to be. I remember reading that and been like, "What?" I was like, "No thanks," because I had a hands-on job, and as soon as I could get in an office and sit at the desk, I was like, "Fuck,
this is much better, much safer."
Up.
Right?
Yeah.
You talking about Black Sabbath? It's interesting looking back at like that period of discovery when you're a kid and listening to records. That what is the Iron Man? That when that guitar comes in on Iron Man, I mean, what is better than that? You know what I mean? Like, that's inspired. Yeah, dude, that has inspired a jillion guitar players, man. I don't typically look at metal bands per se as like huge inspiration for the exact music that I'm making, but the truth is, all of that stuff is a part of it. That powerful distortion, starting around that Black Sabbath time. I mean, God, as a kid, it would just, it just blew me away. You listen to those records, it was like a religious experience,
Oh, dude, I know exactly what you're talking about, because Ozzy, again, I remember hearing Zakk Wylde's tone on Perry Mason. I'd never heard anything like it. It was like, he probably used the fuzz, and it sounded terrible and awesome at the same time. I couldn't explain it. It was just like angry bees, and he started doing the pinch harmonics and just really started to like get into like being Zach. And I just remember listening. I was like, man, I gotta learn how to do that. And like CC DeVille's tone off of Flesh and Blood, I love that. And of course Van Halen, but yeah, Black Sabbath. Like you said, like I think he had something to do with like the distortion being built into the amp, because back then, like everything was like clean amps, and you had to dirty it up with like a box. And I don't know if this is true. I kind of remember reading like an old Guitar World saying he was like, why don't you just build it in? And kind of started implementing, because
I don't know.
I'm a big distortion guy.
Oh, for sure. I like this is not metal as much, but and people always talk about his tone, so it's not really a super original observation, but like I love the social distortion crunch. You know what I mean? The Mike Ness sound. A Les Paul crunched out in that way. It's not maybe as much as some metal stuff, but it's still super, like jumping around a bit here. But before we started this band and before we started to be around, or I started to be around guys that were really doing music, I was not aware of when you hear these conversations about tone and stuff like that. That's not mythical stuff. There is a difference. You know what I mean? There's a big difference in pickups, that amps, pedals, and guys do find ways to get unique guitar tones. You know?
Yeah, there's a God. It's like an endless thing, and you can even mess with the amp, like the bias settings. You can go hot, you can go cold, you can cook your tubes, you can keep your tubes cold, and then push the front of the amp, and it's just like there's so many ways, and I love that part. Also, it gets kind of dicey because these digital modelers are so convenient now. I can bring my rig all over the world, get the same tone, the same. It's almost there. There's a little smidge missing that only I would know. But man, what a time to live in. Like you can just press a button and just a preset pops up of your favorite artist, which back then you used to have to listen and move your amp and try different things. And, you know, as a kid, like you don't have access to like all your guitar heroes where they're like, hey, put a Seymour Duncan in here, put a DiMarzio.
Yeah.
You just,
I think a lot of guys,
gorillas.
yeah, I think a lot of guys opt for the modeling thing, at least playing live. Maybe in the studio, you try to get the real thing, but they're so close that, you know, most, not to talk down on the audience, but, you know, I would say a pretty big majority of the audience is probably not super nuanced on those fine points of tone. You know what I mean? I mean, if you just randomly interviewed a bunch of people in a given audience, and you showed them somebody playing the same guitar part with a Telecaster, a Strat, and a Les Paul, probably most of those people couldn't tell you which one's which. You know, but music heads, they'll pick it up right away. That's a Stratocaster for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to learn yourself and to convince when your bandmates, like, hey, does that 100-watt tube amp sound good? Yes. But tell you what, it don't work for these smaller stages. And the people out in the audience absolutely do not care. I said, for the most part, people are there for the lyrics and the singer. And that some people just never get that. I know it, right? You know, when people, I remember one of the first times somebody asked to take my picture, and I was like, yes, no one asked to get a guitar player's picture. Here it turns out they thought I was Brian Martin. She handed the camera to Brian, and he's like, are you really going with this? I said, Brian, take my picture.
Yeah, let me get some of this. That part right there is it is the truth, and it probably says a lot about personalities that end up the personalities of people in bands, because most of the time the people that play bass, drum, and guitars are okay with that. They're all right with it, but those front people probably wouldn't be. I don't know that I would. You know what I mean? If somebody said, hey, do you want to give up a bunch of weekends and stuff to play rhythm guitar in my band? It would have to be a pretty big one, you know, because that would mean I wasn't at the center of it. You know, I mean, front people tend to be that kind of personality, I think. But you know, our level of fame, so to speak, is not too big. We're in a good spot where it's easy to be ourselves and be humble. And there are people that know who we are that come to our shows and stuff. And what's nice about the size of operation we have right now is when we're done playing and stuff, you know, almost invariably we'll have time to, if anybody wants to talk with us or something like that, we always will, you know, always talk a little bit and if somebody's interested in something or wants to know where a story came from a song or something, we always have time to talk to them.
Yeah, I tell you what, it makes a huge difference. Even me, a grown ass man, I remember BJ from American Aquarium standing in line to talk to every single person at the show, and that was my first Red Dirt Texas experience. Even though he's from North Carolina.
Yeah,
and I walked up to him, and he's like, "You're the guy with the headphones," and I said, "I'll take that." And it's just how cool he was, and I was like, "Man." And what a great introduction into the scene of him being like, yeah, just give me the whole lowdown and just being like a regular guy.
He might be the best intro man to the scene, because I've never got a chance to be on a bill with those guys, but man, I've never heard an ill word about that guy. And it just seems like a super, super cool, down to earth guy, man. He like that whole deal of waiting and talking to the fans. That just makes people love that music more too, because they know it's written by somebody that's just like you say, he's just a normal guy.
Yeah, it's great too. Like I can't say how many people, like Sunshine from Shane Smith and the Saints. I was like, hey man, I know this is kind of like unbecoming of another guitar player, but I took a picture of your pedal board. I got to know what's on it. And he was like helping me build a Sweetwater cart. Like, yeah, use this. And, keep the settings like this. And it's just, everybody I've met has been like so cool. And like, for me, it's awesome because like, I don't really get to talk to musicians other than like doing these and whatnot. And like, I can go to work and people absolutely do not care what I do. They're like, oh, you play guitar? I'm just like, yeah, I don't talk, but any chance I can talk with musicians and see music, even though like it's especially because like I've become like slightly obsessed with the whole Texas and the Oklahoma and the Red Dirt. I got to drive to, Virginia has like a big boom, like Virginia, West Virginia. They have like a big booming country thing right now. That's just so unique and so good as well as so that's not that far away, but it's great to see that a lot of these Texas, they're starting to hit up the Northeast and coming down, and it's awesome because they like
dude, we would love to and maybe, like I said, I think we're at this holding position right now where, if we can make another good record, like an album, and it's a big ask because all the guys are busy. It's in a weird spot in our lives for it, but we're going to do it. I'm going to make sure that happens. But man, I would love to get up that way and play. I would love to get up that way. I think people would really like it. That's one thing about playing around here. I love to play around here, but it's we're very we're very much part of what is normal here. You know what I mean? And we'd love to play New York. In anywhere up in that neck of the woods would be so much fun, just because it'd be something different for us and for most of the people listening.
Yeah, it's crazy how like, and I get it. A lot of people that were in the same position as me, like when people say, "Hey, do you like country music?" I would think like Achy Breaky Heart, I Got Friends in Low Places, all that stuff that just was not for me. And like your music, I could show that to someone and they'll go, "That's country?"
Right.
It's, you know what I mean? And it blows their mind. I was like, yeah, this is considered Texas country. And they're like, the songs have substance. They have the stories, and you guys have, I was just saying, it has like a rockin' edge to it. I was just very reminiscent of like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers kind of sound. to like somebody that likes rock, and you can say, like I always say, like I hate hyphening things, but you can really go down into the Texas and the scene down there and not even realize you're listening to what you guys would absolutely call country music, because it's so different from, you know, truck, dog, beer, tailgate, all the songs that come out with the snap and clap tracks with that 808 hi-hat.
The stuff,
I'm like, no,
that stuff they're doing, man, that stuff they're doing now. Oh man,
yeah, but
I get it why those guys are doing it. You know, I mean, as far as the musicians, like, it's hard to argue with the stuff sells, you know, but that snapping thing, I hate it. I just, oh God, I hate it. I don't know. At a certain point in there, the Texas country thing and all of the branches that are attached to that. I love Texas and I love Texas music, but the people, there's a lot of other people from other places that need that should be recognized for being a part of creating what largely gets referred to as Texas country now. You know, just off the top of my head, I mean, out of Oklahoma, you know, back at some of these more original guys, Cross Canadian Ragweed, out of Kentucky, guys like Chris Knight. These guys were making Texas country music, and they weren't making it in Texas. You know what I mean? So, but I wish somebody would do this sometime, and maybe they already have. But I would love to be able to read a book that traced that lineage of where the thing that ended up being called Texas country came from, because I'm guessing that stuff probably, the genesis of it probably goes back maybe even to like when Willie Nelson gave up Nashville and came down to Austin. I think a bunch of that stuff, Austin is not really a hub per se of Texas country music these days, but it has played a big role in it historically, I think, because for me, guys like Robert Earl Keen and Lyle Lovett and guys like that are some of the godfathers of that movement. And you can kind of trace it generation by generation, you know. Guys like Randy Rogers' band, for example, that are still making fabulous music. God, I love their latest record. I love it. You know, those guys were getting rolling around 2000, you know, probably in that era. And I don't want to say they've peaked, because I don't know that that's fair, but, you know, they were riding really big in that 2007 to 15 era, say, you know. Anyway, there's a lineage of this stuff. And like you said, it retains elements of country music, but it's much more liberal in how you choose to apply that. And one thing I have to mention, because I was thinking about it when you started this part of the conversation, is, you know, our music comes from Lubbock, Texas, but our music was produced in Austin by a guy named Eric Harrison. That's a Lubbock original. He's originally a Lubbock guy. And his partner in recording is a guy named Mike Ingber. That's a guy out of New York. Jewish guy from New York. You know what I mean? And so we took this product from West Texas that was pretty unpolished, and a lot of the dynamism that comes from that music is from those two guys. And so that's another big part of it. You know what I mean? It's not totally homogenous, actually. I wrote the songs. I wrote them, or me and Blaze wrote them. And then we took them to these guys, one of which is a Lubbock guy originally, but he was playing in like new wave bands in Austin at that time. And then Mike, the guy from New York, he went to one of the great music schools, Juilliard or one of these things, to be a jazz drummer. Okay. So we got some cool ears on that project, and we didn't just go down there and lay those songs down as is. Some of the structure, some of the progressions, stuff like that, they worked with us on and made the songs better for it. So, like we talked about when it's starting this whole conversation about being open-minded, when those guys starting to chop at those songs a little bit, you should put an F sharp major in that thing right here. At first I thought, man, don't mess with this. This shit's gold, man. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
And then you actually do it and you go, oh man, that's much better. So anyway, the whole genre is a lot of fun. And I think, because I think the big part of it's because there's not really any rules attached to it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I just remember the first time listening to it, I'm like, man, this is country. This sounds like these guys are using Mesa Boogie amps, and I was like, man, I love it. Like Cross Canadian Ragweed. I was like, that sound, like in the Great Divide, that like whole jam band, fun. They got fun songs, they got serious songs, they got story songs of real life and fictional, and just like I really like the song structure, and they're rocking out.
Yeah,
and like, you know what I mean, like
Oklahoma, pothead music. It's awesome.
Yeah, Yeah, I love it, and like I've never met anybody around here that ever heard of Cross Canadian Ragweed or Cody Canada until it's just recently. The lead singer of one of the bands I play with, he goes, yeah, and to think I yelled at my dad for playing all those Cross Canadian Ragweed CDs over and over and over again. I was like, we've been in a band for 10 years and never once did you ever put this on the radio? And he was like, well, I was tired of listening to it. And I was like, do you know how long of a path I had to take to get to Cody Canada? And here it's been sitting right next to me in this.
And you've had it the whole time.
Yeah.
No,
his dad was
what'd you say? His dad what?
His dad was like, Cody Canada? I was like, yeah. Just saw him last week. And he was like, that's amazing. I was like, it's amazing is that you knew about him. And I said, I've been walking around here not being able to, when I say, hey, have you ever heard Cody Canada and The Departed? And they're like, who? I'm like, oh my God. And then like, give them a song. And they're like, dude, this is good. I'm like, yeah. And then, it turns out they're giving me back songs. And
what? It's part of that is like the generation that we come from, because now with stuff like iTunes and Spotify, people in Delaware can find that, and they may find it inadvertently, not through searching for it, but through the algorithms. They're playing stuff that's similar, and it comes up, and so that's another thing. Talking about living it's easy to be down about things in our country, right? That seems to be a general attitude, sort of a negative empire in decline kind of attitude and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not sure that's actually true, because there's so much good stuff going on too. Even little things like that. Being able, I'm a Spotify guy, but I have all kinds of cool stuff come up on Spotify that it might be a guy from up there in the Northeast that if he was on in the old way where he was on his little tour pattern, I would never have had a chance to get to this guy, but now it pops up and there you go,
Yeah. And you can download his entire discography in 30 seconds.
Oh man.
You're like, oh, I'm a fan.
Best thing. That's the best thing ever.
I love it. The little circle gets complete.
It's done.
And then
I don't ever hear I don't listen to the radio much anymore. And I know radio, I know radio guys and DJs and stuff, especially in this area. And I love and respect what they do. But I don't I don't ever listen to them much, because how can I listen to the radio when I've got the control to listen to almost anything in the world at my fingertips, you know?
Yeah. It's just, it's instant. It's incredible because, like you said, like if we were doing this back in the day, we'd be opening up the trunk. Like, what do they say? Like Chris Ledoux. Hey, want to check out my album? Right out the trunk.
That.
Doing
actually have to have a physical copy. You actually have to have a physical copy of that thing, you know?
Yeah. And going up to billboards and telephone poles and stomping your flyer in and trying to hand it out. Yeah. And now it's, you know, you make a TikTok, you make a Facebook event, and you make a post, and please share.
Yep.
Which is also convenient and yeah. It's convenient, but it's also another job, another set of skills you have to learn, which also can be annoying because like people ask me like TikTok advice, and if it's something about like how to edit videos or anything, I'm like, I have no idea. I do the green screen, I press play. I don't really know how to chop or edit on it. I'm just set it and forget it. That's how I am.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
There's like I got an uncle that lives in Austin that's been a big influence on me in musical taste and stuff. He's an awesome guy, and he told me something one time when we were playing video games together, playing sports games against each other, and he said that it's just an ironclad law of the universe that the younger person is better with technology. Right, like with playing games and stuff like that, and that's what you see now. You know, you talking about editing or any of these details. That the young cats they know, you know, they can operate that thing like a expert grand piano. You know what I mean? They can get all that stuff going. But we're from a little bit different era where that stuff came out when we were already adults. You know?
Yeah. They're like, this is how you do it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, go drive my stick car. Good luck.
Yeah, they can't do that stuff. Yeah, that's it. Or change the tire.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah, they don't. You know what's weird, though? We say that, and like you were kind of mentioning earlier, the world has a way of balancing itself out because that generation, you know, typically we would look at that as the generation that couldn't change a flat or whatever. But you know what's weird is like that song Pipeliner that we have, a bunch of young pipeline welders love that song. And the reason there are a bunch of young pipeline welders is because there's been a shift recently where a lot of folks are bypassing the college path and going to trade schools and stuff, you know, which I think is, you know, depending on circumstance, is a wise choice, you know. But so there's the whole bunch of kids that can't do anything, but there's still a stream of new young ones coming out that can do that kind of thing. You know what I mean? It all works out.
It's just right. I am terrible with a torch. Like I've never welded, but oxyacetylene or no.
Man,
it just reminds me of how terrible I am at burning.
People think that so that song Pipeliner is largely responsible for what success we've had, and it's not. It has elements of truth in it, by autobiographical truth, but it's not. None of that stuff happened. Okay, like I didn't actually do any of this stuff, but the reason I bring that up is because, you know, I'm a foreman in a small fab shop, and I can weld and do that kind of stuff, but I'm actually not a pipeline welder. Those guys, that's a special thing, and they're very proud of it. And an old friend of mine from way back childhood sent me a kind of a nasty message on Facebook about that when all that happened. It said, it said something to this effect. You ain't no damn welder. You need to stick to singing.
Okay.
Something like that. I hadn't talked to this guy in years and years. Anyway, I could have went the way of getting mad about it, but I think he just misunderstood. The story's fictional. It's not actually true. You know what I mean? But it's funny how that kind of stuff gets attached to the person singing it, because they think that that's actually you. And that kind of stuff happens to me all the time. I'm not a great, big, huge guy, but I'm a big, fairly good sized guy with a ton of tattoos and stuff. And I can't tell you how many people have told me that after they meet me, they're like, "Oh man, I'm so nice to meet you. I was really intimidated by you." And I always tell them that if you are intimidated by me, then you just haven't really met me yet, because I'm not a fighter guy, none of that kind of stuff. I'll tell you this, I've lost more fights than I've won, and that hadn't even been that high of a total. But I just look mean. I'm not mean. That's not me. The pipeliner thing makes people, that's why I say that. Pipeliner thing makes people think that I'm out ready to whoop somebody's ass at any given second. And the last thing in the world I'm ever really looking for is any kind of fight. That's not my nature.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. It costs too much money. Even if you win, you lose. And even if you win or lose, it hurts.
Oh,
it hurts. Yeah, your hands are gonna hurt. It's just, and it's not worth it. And normally, 9 times out of 10, it ain't. If it ain't for survival, or to protect your life, there is 9 times out of 10 no reason. Just walk away.
Well, and that male ego part comes into it almost every single time, and if you have not been tested, a lot of times it's real easy to fall in the trap of believing that you're a real tough guy. But there are a lot of tough guys out there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a high risk. It's a high risk endeavor, because there's a substantial number of people out there that are tough enough,
Yeah. But yeah, that actually, I saw your comment today on the video. You said it's a semi-true story. Now, being a country artist, and if you're singing a story of something like that, like a stand-up comedian will tell a story that they did, but it's embellished, and sometimes it's not even true. But people go, "Oh, you did that?" And they, like, how do you find a way to differentiate? Like, if you're on stage and you're singing a song where people will be like, somebody, like the character in the song's either like terrible or did something, and it's almost like, you don't want to stop after every song and explain and be like, this is a fictional song. I am not the character.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not the main character. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do that? Because, like,
I try
your friends and
I try to embody that when we play it. I am that guy, when we play that song, I'm that guy. But I know sometimes Blaze has chimed in. This story's autobiographical. It's true. And I always kind of give that, no, it's not. But no, you definitely want to, you need to be that person in that story for sure, and sing it that way. That's the whole, that's part of the whole art of the thing is to be that guy. I'm trying to think of, great story songs that are that way, but if you think about, Poncho and Lefty or something like that, I don't know exactly what the setup in Poncho and Lefty is, but those guys could be certainly Merle Haggard's part. I think he is Lefty. That you know, like they are that person, you know. Or I was mentioning the guy Chris Knight. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he has a song called "Down the River," you know, and in the song it's in first person, you know. This guy kills his brother, and he's got to take vengeance and get that guy back, and he does, and it's very believable. And to some extent, when somebody writes one of those songs like that, maybe the truth is, even if they say that's not me or whatever, maybe it kind of could be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I heard a guy talking about Robert De Niro today, and he said it's kind of like Matthew McConaughey. He's a fabulous actor, but I think he's pretty much always just been playing himself. Like most of those characters are roundabout who that guy actually is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. With the first Ryan Reynolds, like he always plays like the same kind of like sarcastic, real quick, witty type deal.
Always.
But
no, go ahead.
I just love that you said that. He said, for those 3 minutes, you are that character. That's a really cool concept.
Oh yeah, I think you need to be. And one of the things that has been the hardest to come by in this music thing is I'm always trying to learn to be more dynamic on stage. It's odd because I've gotten to a point where I'm not scared to be playing the show, but as far as movement and stuff like that goes, and selling it is harder to me than playing it. And so I'm always trying to get better at that part, you know?
Yeah, like showmanship.
Yeah, to be a showman. Yeah, that part. It's easier for me to get up there and give the songs out with some work put in it, but the showman part, that part's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's funny, and like people will dog you on that. Like I don't know if you know like Dream Theater, John Petrucci, the guitar player. Well, he's a fantastic guitar player, but he'll just sit there like this, playing 13,000 notes, playing one of the best guitar players in the world, and he'll just all the facial
there's no show
expressions
to
you
it.
get from him.
Do you see that guy back there?
And he that's a little bit.
I don't know if you can see him back there, but there's another little guy coming down the line here. But
banging the piano in the back.
Yeah. No, that show part is some guys are better at the show part than they are at actually singing and stuff. You know, like they're natural showmen. And like I said, it's weird because I do have an outgoing personality by nature. But it's the physical part. It's actually getting up there and being comfortable with expression with your body that is harder to me. And our music is not like, I'm not going to look like Mick Jagger. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I'm always thinking I could sell this more, you know?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because I've seen people do it, and I've seen the people overdo it because something else is lacking on the other end, but it makes up. It's funny, but then you'll see the person they're doing a great job, and you're just like, is this guy having fun? And you'll go talk to them. They're like, having a great time, and it's like, tell your face that.
Right, right.
Smile.
Yes.
Oh, I'm having a great time. Well, does your face know you're having a great time? I just know people that they always look like they don't want to be in every room they're in, but they're ecstatic.
Yeah. Oh, yes. In fact, I think that's probably like when I see clips of us and stuff, that's kind of one of the problems that I've got is that I'm taking playing the song seriously, and sometimes it's like I'm in a shutdown mode in my own little world and not very concerned with the audience. And so that's something I want to get better at. But, you know, again, too, it kind of depends on what you're playing. You know, what sound do you have? What are you doing? It wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to be doing a whole bunch of, you know, Dwight Yoakam stage antics and stuff for a lot of the music that we play, you know, but I think there's moments where I could more, you know?
Yeah. It's the first time I saw him. First off, that I knew him as
He's
an actor.
badass.
It blew
He's
my
badass
mind.
anyway.
Yeah. Doyle. We ain't got no band.
Yeah.
That's how I knew him. I loved Sling Blade. And he was the doctor in Crank. And then people are like, hey, he's a musician, dummy. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. And then the first time I seen him up there moving, I was like, that's incredible.
Oh, dude, he's a badass musician too. He writes great songs. Those songs can range from being really twangy country to having big rock elements in them. I'm a big fan of Dwight. I saw him not too long ago, maybe in 23. I want to say 23, 22 at the earliest. He's in his early 60s, and I don't think he missed a beat as far as, you know, performance goes. And he had just had a kid. He's like 61 or 62 with a brand new baby.
Wow.
So, I mean,
like
what that tells me is, what it tells me is whatever shaking he's got going on, they're obviously working. It ain't the only shaking he's doing.
I was thinking,
you know?
he's doing it vertically and horizontally.
Yeah, he is with somebody young enough to have kids still. So he's kind of winning in that way, I guess.
Yeah, Dwight's he's still spry.
He is, and he ain't handsome. He ain't a fine looking fella. He's all charisma. He's not. I'm bald too. Okay, I'm a bald guy too, but I can't. All my friends always tell me this too. This is the kind of friends I've got. They always tell me, quote unquote, grow out the back length. They want me to
like grow. A samurai?
They want me to grow the back part of my hair out so it looks good with a cowboy hat, but it's bald on top. Just because they want to make fun of me is the only reason they want me to grow out the back length. But Dwight does that.
Funny.
If he takes that cowboy hat off, there's no hair under there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, now that I'm thinking of it. That's probably what Brett Michaels looks like too. When you take the skin tight bandana off.
Yeah. There's a lot of those guys that honestly the cowboy hat thing for me is as much as I respect the cowboy hat and cowboy culture and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of a prop for me too, because a bald guy does have to wear something, you know. A lot of the sort of identity of our band, I feel like, comes from that, because I think the cowboy hat fits the structure of my face and stuff like that well, and I'm kind of close enough to that world to maybe kind of be able to represent it in some way. Growing up out here, I wasn't. I didn't come from one of those families that were quote unquote cowboy people. We weren't horse people and all that kind of stuff. But oddly enough, we lived sort of when I was in high school, through junior high and high school, we lived on a street, but it was one street kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And all of the people on that street, the houses were very separated and had, 2 or 3 acres with it. And so the people who lived across the street from me had horses, and they had kids that were quite a lot younger than me. So, long story short, I ended up having free reign over these horses. And so there was a period of my life where I rode horses a lot, and without any barriers in a way. Like, I lived far enough out of town that I would catch those horses, saddle them, and take off out in the country with them. Me and a buddy, me and some friend, whoever happened to be around, we would take those things and ride those things all over the place. And so I kind of learned a lot about. I'm not an expert in horses, but I'm comfortable riding horses, and really one of the favorite memories of my life. So I'm not a cowboy. I've never worked cattle. I've never roped and branded and all that kind of stuff. I know people that do, but I am a big fan of that culture and the horse and all that stuff.
Yeah. A bunch of my friends, they all had horses and horse farms, and I dated a lot of girls that. It's funny, like Talbot was talking about barrel racers, and I was like, yeah, I've known a couple. They tend to be on the little wild side, but
oh yes,
man, after getting bit by a couple, I was like, nope, just an animal that we just don't see eye to eye.
Well,
I'm just like
that whole lifestyle thing, is part of the romantic identity of the American West and all that kind of stuff, is the horses, cowboys, that whole thing. And obviously not just in the West, that people have horses everywhere, but they're such a big, powerful animal. And you're talking about those barrel racer girls being wild. In my experience, it seemed that most people that came up around that world, they tend to have some of that in them. Whether they there's a certain amount of defeat of fear, I think, that comes from growing up around those big old animals, so those folks have all been kicked and bucked off, and, those guys that do the cow work, they've, had all kinds of crazy messes, getting tangled up with calves and all this kind of stuff. And so there's a certain toughness, I think, that comes from that, and a certain wildness that comes from it too. And, I think that's kind of romantic to the broader American culture,
Yeah. Where I was, where I grew up, there's a lot of Amish. So they're yeah, it's crazy how like they're just like kids riding around these buggies, and like it's like the horse kind of knows where to go, and But
did you grow up around those people in Delaware?
I grew up. It's weird. I moved around a lot. My dad was a lineman, and his territory kind of changed a little bit. He worked. We both worked for the railroad. Well, he worked. So yeah, that was out in like PA, which is the very rural. It isn't now. I've gone back, and it's weird. The Amish are still there, but there's a lot more houses around the land.
I was thinking, I wonder if he grew up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I grew up around there. It's funny, is like Pennsylvania. It's not as big as Texas when I tell people, but yeah, it's crazy. Like right now, I could drive through 3 states in probably 15 minutes. So like, it's the tri-state area, but yeah, I'm like 20 minutes away from where I used to live.
Well, and another thing, a misconception that people have about culture and geography in our country is that, anybody from the Northeast, that they all live in cities. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
You know, some of the most beautiful landscape
Yeah.
in the whole place is up that way, and horse people and cow people and those, you know, that culture is not just a Southwestern thing. You know, that stuff's all over the whole United States.
We used to play capture the flag, and you'd have the flag on either side of a cornfield, and we'd run through the corn and do anything you could to get the other neighborhood to stop getting your flag. And like we would wear like ski goggles because that corn would cut your face and run through it. My buddy, he would take a broomstick and put it through his jacket, and just the farmers must have hated us. And he
Because you were just
literally
wiping it
knock
out.
down the corn. Yeah, I remember they were like, "Okay, we're done with the corn. Let's plant soy." And it gets kind of high. So I was like, one night or like around dusk, I took my lawn tractor and I cut a path to the next neighborhood through this guy's soy crop. Oh my God, he showed up at the house. And I just remember my dad being like, "The tire mark just come back to the house. Why didn't you go somewhere else?" I'm like, "I don't know." The guy, "You know how much it cost me in crop, blah, blah." And I was like, "There's got to be a compromise." And he's like, "Compromise? This is my land." I was like, "Well, typical teenager. That's on you."
I'm sure that guy, I'm sure when he saw it, he was like, "God, it's always the kids, man."
Yeah, I just remember telling him, and he's like, "Why would you do that?" And I just said, "That's where the girls live."
Yeah, I needed a road in there.
Yeah, I was like, "This stuff's scratchy. Look at these legs. I can only take so many Benadryl there, farmer." But yeah, and like where our band used to practice, that was Quarryville, and that's in the middle of nowhere. I remember the guitar player broke his hand, and I remember calling 911. They're like, "Yeah, we don't send ambulances out there." I'm like, "What?"
Oh man,
Like,
you
okay.
got to come to
Yeah,
us.
they're like, that's what they said. They said, "There's 2 locations I can give you. I suggest you drive to one of them." I was like, I'm like their dad at the time was like in the 80s. I'm like, whoa, you mean to tell me? And they're like, "No, you have to get a private service." I was like, "Phew." It's weird because like I'm so you dial 911 and they come to your house whether you ask them or not. Somebody will show up. They were just like, "No, we don't
go there.
Call private service."
Yeah, that's when you know you're out there.
Yeah, that's why they loved it out there. It's if the state police, if they showed up, somebody was leaving with them. That's what we always knew. They weren't there just to do a nuisance.
It's pretty cool to be. I don't live outside of town now. I would like to get some way out of Lubbock and have a little place, but it's just nice to. I think most human beings could, even if you were a bona fide, a person from the middle of Brooklyn or something, you could probably understand why people like to be out in a place that's with a little bit of space. That's it's mainly what it is. Nobody to mess with you.
The older I get, the more land I want to acquire. Like I want to play with tannerite on my own property.
Yeah, that's another thing. Honestly, like shooting guns, and people like to hunt, fish, all that kind of stuff. I am not a big mega hunter fisher guy, but any chance I get, I like to do either one.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I've never been hunting, but my God, I've hit so many deer in cars. I used to live right next to a nature preserve, and they'd hit you. And I remember putting the whistlers on my car, and that even more, especially I had a white Firebird. For some reason, a white car, they do some damage to vehicles.
Oh yeah,
and
I don't know how much a deer weighs, but it's more than a person, and yeah, they'll tear it all up. I don't, I'm like I say, I'm not a big hunter guy really. But it's, I've been in on like processing some deer from time to time that have been actually brought here to me. That's a whole nother story, but it's something kind of cool about, taking something from nature and actually making, making some stuff to eat yourself. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like when I was in Key West, the fishermen would come with their fish and give it to the bartender, and they would prepare the fish like right then and there. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is definitely, that's definitely a skill I don't possess. I've seen people clean fish, and they go home and they come back, and they have it. But that makes me that I love like deer meat. We used to do favors for the Amish for if they needed. They all had tablets, and I would load their tablets up with whatever they wanted, and they would give us like a lot of canned meats, and it was like ground deer meat wrapped in whatever seasonings they would use and wrapped in like the cabbage leaves. And I love that. And just their kielbasa and just their jerky. It makes me miss
those people. I guess after we discuss this, my wife is getting fussy, so maybe I might have to go after this. But it's kind of interesting. Those Amish people, from what I understand, from what I read, that there was a split at one time over religious doctrine, and the Mennonite people came out of that group of people originally. And there's a lot of those people around this area.
Okay. And they
live, they don't live as, in the same way as the Amish. They have a lot of, more modern technology and stuff, but depending on the group, they're still very traditional, the way they dress and all that kind of stuff. And they're still to this day, very much, they're fairly private. Most of their community and interaction and stuff comes from other people in their community,
Yeah. It's funny. I was dating a girl in school, and I remember asking her, I said, why do you always wear a hat? She was a Mennonite. I had no idea.
Oh, really?
She's like, you never cared or noticed? Or I was like, oops. Is that explains the skirt.
I guess not.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, the Mennonites, they're more, I guess they use the term worldly,
right?
But they have their ways around it. They don't have the phone in the house; it's out in the shed because they built the one house we lived in, and it was amazing. Of just they are some of the hardest workers I've ever seen. And that house was the squarest house. I just remember everybody that came in after them, they were like, who built this house? I remember the carpet guys. They were like, this house is completely square. I was like, and they're like, there was no computers involved? I was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I picked them up in a van. I dropped them off.
They have that reputation. Even around here, same deal. Really hardworking people, quality work, it's interesting. I think they've done well largely as a community economically because of that too,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, their houses are beautiful. It's like stepping into a time machine of just like the woodworking, the carvings, and a lot of times they're completely spotless of dust and anything, and it's crazy. It's like walking in the museum because all their cutlery and cooking utensils and their stoves are all. It's like from the land before time.
Yeah,
coming from your traditional American family, and you just go and they live forever. So there definitely has to be a benefit from eating stuff that you You know, they're not using all the fertilizers and pesticides. They're doing it the old way, just with the horses and the plow and eating from the land. And when you see how old they get, that's definitely telling that
Yeah. Yeah. Like maybe we're eating our way
that.
to, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, definitely a discipline that I would never be able to convert to. Definitely,
No.
this has to be something you have to be born into.
Yeah. I don't think they got too many people knocking on the door to join it necessarily, but
Yeah,
well,
I hear you.
unfortunately,
But, yeah, I don't want you to get yelled at.
I know, and the
I'm
reason
glad
I know
this
that,
worked though.
me too, and the reason I know that it's my time has come is because she came in here and kind of milled around the kitchen for a minute and then went back, and I'm like, I know that's my symbol, my signal to go get that little boy is the main thing.
Yeah,
She
I
keeps
hear
him there. She keeps him during the day, and so she's not working right now. So her job is keeping him, and I think it's the harder of the two jobs for sure.
yeah, but yeah, I'll let you go, dude. I'm glad I got to talk to you, and then I really enjoy your music, and I know a lot of people do too, and I hope when you guys do release a new album or new EP or whatever, that it does really well, because it's a great sound, and like you said, like I really think the more people that hear it, the more people that are gonna love it.
Well, I appreciate it, man. It's always a pleasure, especially people that are from further away. It's always very reaffirming to hear that, and yeah. So, like I say, the next project is kind of in its infancy, but I've already set up a time to get with a guy on possibly on some of the next project. Some of that we might do here in Lubbock because of life circumstances. There's a guy that produces here in Lubbock that's actually friends with the guy that does the stuff in Austin, and I'm going to do some working with him and try to get some stuff to a state of being ready to record some new stuff. So there will be some new stuff coming.
Cool. I look forward to it.
Well, all right.
definitely
I
share it
appreciate y'all talking to me, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.
Of course.